Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tri-Side Chat Season 3. This is an exclusive interdisciplinary talk show featuring interviews with folks about creativity, the arts, healing, personal growth, and spirituality, among many other themes. I am your host, Aishwarya, and for this episode, I am happy to welcome two guest artists that I've had the privilege of collaborating and working with in different capacities. From Bangalore to the Bay Area, these Bharatanatyam beauties have made their mark as artists that bring a level of maturity and intentionality to their work in the diaspora. In addition to performance and choreography, these dancers have some very interesting and innovative approaches to the teaching and education of Bharatanatyam in the South Asian community. So I am very excited to pick their brains about all of the above and more. Please welcome Surabhi Bharadwaj and Nitya Narasimhan. Hi, ladies. Welcome to Tri-Side Chats, and thank you so much for being here. I wanted to get started with the topic of motherhood. And I know this is a phase of life that many women and dancers specifically entered into during the pandemic, including both of you. So I would love to hear how your experience of being a parent has influenced the type of work that you create or the themes that you explore in your choreography, and whether being a parent has shifted your creative process or your approach to dancing at all. So yeah, whoever wants to tackle that question first, go for it.
I can go. So I think like motherhood is one of those like irrevocable life changes. And everybody tells you that, it's going to alter your life forever and it's going to be a big change. But until you actually, like, I think even for me personally, the pregnancy itself was like fairly uncomplicated, easy. So I was like, oh, this is like fine, man. Like, this is okay. But then, when the baby is actually there, and then, you realize that it's not just those beginning, like first few months where it's really hard and then it gets easy, but it's like everyday learning, everyday changing, everyday adapting. At some point, you start to realize that it's not like, okay, it's a phase and then like things get easier. Things, of course, get easier, but there is a constant change that happens. And I think the mind eventually learns to shift in a way and adapt to that change. And when the mind changes, it obviously affects how you see everything, including your work and including your art. For starters, you just don't have as much time as you did. You don't have as much mental capacity to like really only think about your work, because there's always this other person that you're responsible to towards, and you have to, like, whether you want to or not, you do think about this other person who's now a huge part of your life. So that way, I think for me, it changed everything about the way I see my art. So not just about like creating new pieces that are influenced by what I'm going through, but in terms of how I even approach like old pieces or old choreography, because you've changed forever as a person, and that affects everything that you do in your art. So even if it's just an alaripu, the way that I do an alaripu now versus the way I did an alaripu 3 years ago, very different. So yeah, so it's definitely like affected my art on the whole, and I would like to believe that it's affected it in a good way, because it's so much more precious to have that time with the art, to have that one-on-one, like just that time, which is just me and my art and nothing else. It's been much more precious. I have, of course, like thought about like 100 different like ways that I can channel all these like emotions and experiences through my art. Most of them have not seen the light of day. Most of them have not like even like started creating or anything. It's just like things that run in your mind. And obviously, like when you're going through something, like dance is something that I've grown up with and it's my comfort. So obviously I feel like this is how I want to express everything that I'm going through right now. So many of it is just like being in my head, like, okay, this piece, that, like, oh, this emotion, this can be explored this way. But of course, like recently I did a work with Cassiet where I did explore some of these things, shifts that happened around me during motherhood. So it's been a fun balance of all of it. But yeah, definitely changes the way I approach my art, the way I see, the way I practice everything. Yeah.
I agree with what Nitya said, and I can relate to most of what she said. And definitely, just to add to that, there's a big change in your body, like how you approach, like each movement, which was so easy for you or so known to you, would have changed. Like so that process of relearning how to work with your body, and just yeah, just making that time itself was like a big challenge for me. Understanding when to create that time, understanding, like putting that time in the already full schedule, just to go out, practice, and practice, or just be in that creative space, has been challenging, and I'm still learning with that. And yeah, definitely the body changes and learning to prioritize things, and because definitely a baby is a major part of our lives now, and there are so many emotions. The way you look at everything around you would have changed, and how the relationships that have been there for so long, all your life, that also experiences change. The way you see those relationships, the way the whether it's with my parents or my husband, everything changes because this new person is part of all of our lives. And how we manage that together, plays a big, brings in a lot of change and new perspectives to see all these relations, everything happening around you, and that definitely has influenced my art making process. And in fact, um, it was hard for me to in, uh, break into creating, right? Like there was a phase where I thought I cannot create anymore, or I mean, I can choreograph, but where is my creative space? Like I can just choreograph movements, but how am I thinking? Am I in that creative space to question things, conceptualize things, or envision, or making art? I It took me a lot of time and effort to get to that space initially, and yeah, so once, I'm still learning, it's still a process. And and no matter what I have been doing since the baby, I it 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 has the motherhood has definitely influenced all my work. um yeah, the way I treat my students, the way I teach classes, the way I practice, everything has changed, and I'm learning and relearning to live with this new me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It sounds like you both have really not just embraced, but kind of accepted the fact that this new role that you've taken on is going to kind of shift who you are as an artist and as a person, like moving forward, right? And I'm sure that, as your kids get older, that's going to keep changing what that looks like in your work too. So, Nithya, you mentioned something about how even the way that you do an alaripu has shifted since becoming a mother. So I'm wondering, I know some of the stuff might be really hard to explain in words, and it's more of like a kind of felt sense, but I'm curious if you are able to maybe pinpoint or describe what exactly feels different for you, like whether that's in your body movement wise or just emotionally.
I think what Surabhi said, right? Primarily, first it was like in the body because my Natya Rambam, it took me 3 months to like figure out how this Natya Rambam, which is like, like supposed to be able to get into that position in your sleep, but to figure out what is the new Natya Rambam in my body because it just felt, and it's not the physical, like how it looks, but how it feels from within was entirely different. And to figure out how this Natya Rambam sits comfortably in my body, it took me a few months to just like do. So I think the Alaripu, in a way, is that comfort piece. And I think that's what I meant to convey, that a piece that is so comfortable that you've been so used to that you can do it like a million times in your sleep. You don't have to think about it. But suddenly I had to think about it. I had to rethink about every moment of the Alaripu, not in the way that I'm learning it fresh and I have to like learn it, memorize it, but to really think about every moment there and how it sits in this new body and how I feel about it. And I think that was a process because it's such a known thing, but then suddenly it's so unknown. And that was very similar to what I was going through in life. So I think that's how it changed everything about like even the most, I don't know, normal, comfortable thing suddenly was different.
Yeah, it's like you almost had to, I guess, rewire your muscle memory of what that was like, given how your body has changed after becoming a mother, right? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know, Surabhi, you were talking about how parenthood has kind of affected even the way that you interact with your students or the way that you teach. And I wanted to kind of shift gears into that because I know both of you, in addition to performing and choreographing, you also teach. You have your own dance schools in the Bay Area. So I think, Surabhi, a more specific question for you is, so I was talking to Varsha, who was one of your former assistant teachers, and she was kind of like telling me about your philosophy and your approach to sort of shifting the framework of how Bharatanatyam is taught. And I think, your students' showcase of Dream Tree, which, was about climate change and, the impact on different aspects of nature, like that's obviously very different from maybe a more traditional or typical annual recital showcase that one would see that's presented by a Bharatanatyam teacher. So I'd love to hear more about your process and journey of developing this new sort of teaching philosophy and incorporating more socially relevant themes, like from the beginning, since when kids are starting, and how you're like implementing that with your students at your dance school.
The way I'm teaching is changing as I'm growing, as I'm learning. And while I'm teaching, I'm learning too. So I'm conscious about I'm the more I'm conscious about my surrounding, what's happening around the world, I bring that into my teaching process as well. And one of the main things that shifted the way I teach from learning teaching amalgam, you learn this, all these, finish all these adu, then begin from that to keeping the classes more towards discussion based, like where we talk about things from it can be about the body, it can be about the political climate, or it can be about something that is like climate change. It can be about the mythological characters. It can be about it, like we have had conversations, varied conversations, which may have started from the dance that they are learning, or something that just in the news that popped up and we have a discussion about it. So all that influences, like I didn't want to ignore that. I didn't want to like come out of the real world and into a space and just okay, forget whatever is happening around you and learn this art form. I didn't want that happening. I wanted to bring the real life experiences into the learning experience as well. uh, there's no denial that Bharatanatyam is very religious, Hindu, based on Hindu religion, and it is very religious art form. And most of the pieces that I have learned or I teach is based on Hindu mythology, right? And but one thing that came to my mind is like, how can I make this art form more secular for myself and for the students who are learning under me? How can I make this more an art form rather than something that is pulling them towards a religion? Because each one can have their own faith, own belief. I didn't want to make this art form tied to a religion, but more of an expression, more, a way of expression. And I don't have all the answers, but I'm still trying different ways to make them also realize that it's not all about religion or bhakti, or because that's the most they see, right? So I want to make sure that they understand this is something that they can express from their, you know, in the truest sense, like whatever they can feel, whatever make it more tangible for them and real for them. So that's something that brought this shift in the way I approach everyday classes, and even like the kind of performances that they give. Not necessarily that it doesn't mean that I've stopped teaching all the, you know, religious, or like, I won't call it religious, but you know, dances that is based on Hindu mythology, or we still do that. And in fact, like, we even ask question, I make it open, the space open for them to freely ask questions, you know, talk about things. You know, I was teaching them the Shabdam, Sarasi Jakshulu. We were talking about it, about, you know, Krishna stealing all the clothes, and how is it fair, even though it is, the composition itself is an Nindastuti, but you know, that led to a conversation about what if a person has done great deeds, and if they also do, you know, inappropriate things, can we still celebrate them? Bringing these stories and connecting them to real life, rather than ignoring, okay, this is just a story, it's just lighthearted, ignoring them, actually having conversations like that. So again, age appropriate, depending on who I'm teaching, and things like that. So with respect to Dream Tree as well, I am really you know, motivated to bring in changes into my lifestyle to make it more sustainable. And I brought that into the class, and we had conversations about what my students are doing, what they believe in, what they made artworks, you know, about climate change or the earth. And we started off the production that way, where they are bringing in conversations, they are starting the conversations, they are talking about things, what they have experienced or seen. And then and the whole Dream Tree production, I wanted them to not just show but experience. So whether, you know, there were sections where all, you know, the students were animals, like sea creatures, or you know, squirrel, or different animals, mammoth. I wanted them to feel that in their body, rather than just show, like, this is showing a fish, how can you be a fish? So that was the whole experience of making this production, Dream Tree. So making them experience different characters, different species, and not just show.
I love that. I think that's something that I honestly wish more teachers did, is like from a young age when students start learning, to help them find that internal connection. Because I don't know, my sense is that it would kind of help students be more interested in the art form, or like at least be more decisive about whether it's something they want to do or not. I think, as I'm sure both of you know, like many parents are enrolling their kids in dance classes for a number of different reasons. And a lot of them are probably initially forced into it because, you know, it's just something their parents want them to do. But yeah, I love what you were saying about with the Dream Tree, just helping them find what it is like to actually embody the fish, or embody whatever animal they are portraying. It's not just about how it looks, but it's also like, how are you feeling? What are you feeling in your body when you're showing that? Which I think is really cool. So I know, Nitya, you also recently launched some new initiatives through your school, Prayukti, and you know, things like residencies, work in progress, community outreach. So I'd love to hear more about your journey of creating these opportunities and finding this new way of, I guess, rebranding your school in a way to like increase accessibility of the art form to folks in the community.
I think you summarized what it is, basically.
But I guess, how did you come up with these ideas?
Okay, so I started teaching like pretty much as soon as I moved to the Bay Area, and I very consciously started teaching only adults. And I was like, I will only teach adults until I'm ready to take on the responsibility of teaching children. Because, like Surabhi said, when you're teaching children, especially children who have grown up, or like they've born here, they've grown up here, their view of the world is very different. So, everything that you tell them has a greater impact than what we take apparent. Like in India, the way they teach, or the way that I have learned, is very different from how I can teach a child here. And not just in India, like 20 years ago versus now, it's very different. Like children like to question, children like to be questioned, children like to be given the tools to ask the right questions, I think, rather than just being told, okay, do this, do this, do this, and you just have to do it, no questions asked. Of course, there is some amount of that in the way that we learn the art form, because you can't question everything and be like, tell me the answers to everything. You can ask questions, but some of it is like, why should I do a tattadavu? My thighs are hurting. Means like you just have to do it because your thighs will get stronger. You will enjoy it. That's how you dance more. That's how you build the stamina to dance more. You can ask questions, but yeah, but I think like teaching children was a big responsibility that I only very consciously took on a little bit later. But adults is something that I just enjoy teaching because they already come with a lot of questions. They already come with a lot of experience from their own end. So the conversations happen very naturally. Like Surabhi said, like with adults, it's very easy to have these discussions because they would have experienced something at work, or they would have had something at home, or they would have read the news about something, and they automatically bring those emotions or those questions or those thoughts into class. And then, there's a discussion about things. So with adults, there's also this other thing that they have come to class by their own choice. And like you said, with children, they're mostly not coming in because they want to in the beginning. So how do you make it get to a point where they really enjoy dance class and they really want to come, and it's not just a place where your mom is forcing you to go? So it's been a very, very slow process, and I'm teaching like a few children, and I would say that my approach teaching adults and children are like, it's very different, but also it's alike in some ways. There's like the basic principle of how I teach is the same, but how I approach it and how I introduce the art form to children is very different from how I do it to adults. So with adults, it's a little more structured and rigid. With children, it's more free flowing, it's more about like movement and enjoying movement rather than just like being like, okay, you have to do this and you have to get it right immediately. It's just about like finding ways to help them appreciate what this art form is about. And yeah, that's been the approach. With Prayukti's new vision, okay, that happened basically when I got a space. And I was like, I have this space. Now, what do I want to do with this space? Like, I want to give back to the community. And how do I do that in a way that, is still holding true to what I believe the art form has the potential to be, where I am, like in the Bay Area, what kind of people are around and what kind of opportunities do these people have? And how can I create more opportunities, keeping in line where I am, who I'm catering to, and what I believe in. So I think that's how the initiatives came about. And the work in progress, we've all seen work in progress showcases, but it's mostly like we're trying to go into another community and trying to showcase our art form there. Can I do something more catered to like Indian art forms and more specific to Indian art forms? And can I get a curated panel of people who have experience in these art forms to actually like give feedback to the artists? So there is feedback from general audience, but when the work is in creation stages, like even for me, when I'm making something, it's always good to have like, at least two sets of eyes watching you and telling you, because in your mind you have this concept and you're so invested in it. And sometimes you just need this third eye who's not heard anything about it to watch it and be like, that's crap, like I don't get any part of that. It's better to get it at that stage than, like once you've presented the work and then you're like, okay, that didn't go the way that I wanted it to. So that's just something that I wanted to do. And also, I think in the Bay Area, something that I've observed and noticed is a lot of students, they get to their Arangetram and then what? They don't know, because a lot of teachers don't teach beyond that, right? Like, because kids go away to college and then teachers are like, okay, now I get the next set of kids and then I train them to their Arangetram. There are very few who continue to persevere and like they want to do things. So I thought I should create opportunities for people like that who don't know Arangetram, and then what can I do with this art form? And just to give them like confidence to create and to go out there and to just like showcase their work and have something. So that was one of the other initiatives that I thought about. And lastly, I think space is always like a huge asset to dancers. Like when you have the space and the time, it's suddenly like, even if you just go and sit in the space, sometimes it makes a difference. So I think that's something that I did want to offer, and that's what the residency is about, like just to give people the space and time to do whatever they want to do. um, my space is catered more towards traditional Indian art forms. So it's just about building, because traditional Indian art forms sadly have a very niche audience. So it's just to cultivate more audience and try to bring in more people through different community outreach programs, because it is an acquired taste. So it's definitely something that you cultivate over time. But how many people have the, I don't know, patience to give it that time? So maybe like smaller initiatives to bring in people and then expose them to it, like slow bouts, and slowly increase their capacity to take in um, more content. Yeah, I think that's the dream, but yeah, it changes every day. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is kind of switching gears a little bit, but I feel like it's still sort of an important part of the conversation that I did want to bring in. And it's about just like, when we say traditional, like, what does that even mean? Right. It kind of brings up this idea of like the problematic history of Bharatanatyam to begin with. And I know that's like a huge topic. I don't want to like go too deep into that rabbit hole of like what the history is necessarily, but I guess I'm just curious, like, for both of you in your respective positionalities as dancers who are practitioners of this form, what has your journey of like learning and understanding the roots of the art form been like for you? And is it something that you find yourself thinking about pretty often or all the time when you are dancing or when you're creating new work?
This has still been a process. I'm still learning, and the narrative of our history that I knew was very different from what I learned later on. And once I got to know this problematic history, I really wanted to share this with more people, and I wanted to let more people be aware of this. And that was my like immediate um, goal. When I learned about this, I wanted everyone else to know. And then I created this dance production because that's the best way I can express, not with words. And so I decided I'll make a dance out of it, and I created Ashrutam to talk about what I learned. But that again, I want to talk about that as well, because like I said, I've been learning since Ashrutam. I realized that I am standing in a privileged position talking about the people who have been oppressed. And from as a like one I heard it from somebody, as a descendant of the oppressors, I don't think I have the right to say anything about the hereditary artists without them being involved in the work, right? So I realized that a little later. I mean, pretty much like during the premiere, right? That's when I understood like what I have done, and kind of went into depression. Then went started reading more, learning more, understanding more. Then I'm still in that phase where I'm confused. How do I go forward from here? I know this has happened. I know I can't live without this art form, but at the same time, I want to, I want to continue, practicing the art form that I have grown up with, but very being very respectful to our dance ancestors. And I don't have answers, but it's something that I constantly keep thinking about. It's when I'm teaching, especially when I'm teaching, because I have the responsibility of bringing up the next generation of dancers, and making sure that they are aware about this. They are open to reading more about our history, the different, because even now, even my students now, they want to take the exams that is available here, right, for Bharatanatyam exams, and the history that they read in those texts are what we learned as when we were growing up, which is half truth, or like altered truth, actually manipulated truth. So yeah, so if they are learning the same thing, they are going to grow up like me, and eventually they're going to learn, and they're still going to be like not sure what to do. So I want to make sure that we have conversations about this, talk about it, making sure my students are aware, and aware that they have to read more outside of what is prescribed, so that they they have a better understanding. And that's where I'm starting, like, at least just being aware, just making sure that I'm conscious about the choices that I make while creating art. I'm more sensitive about what art I make and what I say through my art. And I'm just being respectful and acknowledging all the hereditary artists, past and present, every day when I practice and when I perform. So that's the step that I'm taking at now, but I think there's a lot more. I don't know what is yet to be done. So
Similar boat as Surabhi, except like not as much personal experience to add over here. I think I was also taught the same narrative, that she's probably learned before. And that was the same narrative that I passed on to my students before I knew any better. And of course, when I started learning more, I started having these discussions. I started sending them better resources to read and to get their information. And then we started listening to talks together. We had elaborate discussions, because it was not just a learning that I am passing on to them, but through their learning and them asking me more questions, I was able to go back and read and learn more. So I think, like Surabhi said, it's a constant learning, and it's something that we're all still in the process of doing. Acknowledging and accepting what the past is, I think, is just the first step of it, and we're all probably there, and we're trying to learn more. There is no righting the wrong, like there's no way to make what happened right. So I think that's where maybe Surabhi and me and most of us who are, like privileged folk today, we don't know what to do. Like, and I think part of it is just accepting that there is no way that me as a practitioner today can make what happened right, because it was absolutely wrong, and there's no way for me to rectify that. And I think that's probably the mind space that I'm in at right now, just to accept that this has been wrong, and I can't make it right for whoever's gone through it, because what happened was really awful. And but what can I do now as a practitioner of this art form in a way that's respectful of the history, and just, yeah, still figuring it out too.
Yeah, for sure. I think being on the perspective of the oppressor and holding that discomfort is really challenging. I think whether it's in the history of Bharatanatyam or just anything in general, being on the kind of oppressor perspective and holding the discomfort of knowing that you're in that space is really difficult. And like both of you said as well, it's like an ongoing learning process too. So but yeah, I wanted to kind of transition now into our experiential activity, which perhaps maybe some of the threads of our conversation will come back in. But we are basically going to be doing a guided visualization journey into some subconscious parts of ourself or our artistic identity. So I'm going to be playing some music and guiding us through a meditation to connect with what the music, which is going to be some drumming, to see what that evokes in our psyche and in our subconscious. So after we go through the meditation, which is going to be about like 10 to 15 minutes, we will transition to expressing, releasing, processing whatever came up in the meditation through an art modality of your choice. So that can be with movement or dance, it can be music, visual art, writing, whatever you're kind of feeling called to after the meditation. So yeah, how does that sound? Awesome. Okay, so allow yourself to get into a comfortable position. You can close your eyes or soften your gaze and bring your attention to your breathing. Notice the natural pattern in which your breath rises and falls. Now slowly begin to listen more closely to the drum beat playing in the background. Notice where in your body you feel the resonance of the drum. What does the sensation feel like? Is it loud and powerful, or more soft and subdued? Or perhaps somewhere in between? Allow the sensation to become stronger as you let yourself connect to it more deeply. Now imagine that the sound and the sensation of this drum beat is leading you to a place. Perhaps it is a familiar place where you have been before. Perhaps it is somewhere new and foreign to you. Allow yourself to take in your surroundings fully as you follow the beat of the drum into this other world. As you arrive in this place to where you have been led, what do you see? What other sounds might be present in this place? What do you smell or taste? What is the temperature of this place like? Is it warm? Is it cold? How does the air here feel as you breathe it in deeply? Notice any emotions that come up for you as you explore this place, as well as any memories or other associations that might be present. As you continue to explore this world in which you have arrived, try to see something that catches your attention in this place and find yourself moving towards it now. What is it that is calling out to you? Is it an object, person, an animal, or an element in the environment? Whatever it is, let your curiosity explore it fully now, taking it in with all of your senses. Imagine that whatever is calling out to you has something that it wants to say to you. Listen closely and take note of what it wants to tell you. And thank your messenger for their words to you. And slowly begin to walk back towards where you came into this place from, allowing the sound of the drum to bring you back into your body. Gradually bring your attention back to your breathing and back into your body. As you are ready, you can open your eyes and slowly bring yourself back into the space. Yeah, I'd love to hear how that experiential activity was for both of you and what came up.
I loved it. It was it did take me to a place that was beautiful, and I love the experience.
Same, it was beautiful. It was not like I didn't expect um, what whatever I saw or felt, but it was lovely. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious if any message or any words came up for you during that exercise.
I didn't even hear the drum after the
Mm.
first sometime. I think there was some water in the background, and that's what led me through the rest of whatever I felt. The drum, I think, very vaguely. Only when you mentioned it, I was like, "Oh, there's a drum." But the music, but somehow it was entirely led through the music for me. But it was like I could only hear the water. Maybe that's because I don't know. That's what led my thing. But words that came up were love, light, calm, um, silence.
For me, I'm still actually connected to the drum. So I was completely into the drum. And yes, I did hear water. It led me to a place that is so serene, but that I have been to. And I was so connected to the drum. I was seeing people, uh, you know, uh, over the water, over a log, playing the drum and dancing, and I was dancing with them. And then it led me to waterfalls again in the same place that I have been to. And it was like the waterfall is pretty high, and people actually cliff jump from there. And I almost went, and I really wanted to do that, but it was too high, way too high. So, but now I did. So the drums kind of like prepped me, and my heart is still racing. And I did the jump, and I did feel me going into the water also, and it was beautiful. So yeah, yeah.
Wow, that sounds amazing, both of your experiences. Nitya, was the place that came up for you somewhere you've been before or something new?
It started out as somewhere I've been before, and then it was like a combination of different things. It's something that I've read about, and then something that I've partly seen in a movie, and then it became my own space. So it was like from many different places, and then it became my own.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on this episode of Chai Side Chats. I've really enjoyed our conversations about, I feel like, all things under the sun today. But yeah, I hope that you guys continue to be so intentional with the work that you're putting out there and with your own kind of introspection and self-reflection as artists and as people. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Hello, viewers. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Chai Side Chats with Nitya and Surabhi, as well as our guided visualization with expressive arts experiential activity. If you like this episode, share it with other folks. Do subscribe to the Creativity Awakening YouTube channel and follow our pages on social media linked in the description below. So in addition to these video interviews that are available on YouTube, we also have audio-only solo episodes of Chai Side Chats that you can check out on Podbean, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And you can find the link for that in the description of this video as well. Do stay tuned. The next episode of Chai Side Chats is coming soon.